The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected. The South gets a lashing as a possibly record-breaking storm takes root, where airports have been closed and where the bitter cold has forced dozens of schools to go dark. Then day 2 of the second Trump administration already met with a new lawsuit. Which one of his many executive orders is being targeted? And what a ruling by a Las Vegas judge today means for the case of the 1996 murder of Tupac Shakur. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. A rare, possibly record-breaking winter storm is barreling down on the southern U.S. as Texas is bracing itself. Houston woke up to a blanket of snow. Houston's 2 airports canceled all flights and won't restart flight operations until tomorrow. Up to 10 inches of snow could fall in parts of the state. 50 miles southeast of Houston in Galveston, a beach getaway. This is what it looks like. The sandy beach is covered. In places like Austin and San Antonio, snow and icy roads have led to a number of crashes, and traffic is being diverted off highways. Our Betty Cross in South Austin with a look at conditions for drivers.
We're here on South Congress near its intersection with Slaughter Lane, and you can see this is one of the most treacherous patches of ice we've seen on the roadways today. Several cars, including this white one, are having trouble getting traction, possibly because this road hasn't been treated, or it could be that the water on the road, the precipitation has frozen again, and the trucks just haven't been by this spot. But it's a very good example of why you need to take it slow and why you can be on a roadway and be fine, and then all of a sudden you hit an icy patch like this one. I did talk to Public Works for the city of Austin, and they told me they're only able to treat 20 to 25% of the roads in Austin, which leaves the majority not being treated. And that's what you have to be extra careful for when you get out on the roadways, both today and tomorrow.
Betty Cross reporting from Texas there. And other states along the Gulf Coast also getting hit. A look here at Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Same goes for southern Alabama, which is projected to get up to 6 inches, along with parts of Mississippi, Georgia, and Florida, where, by the way, right now the airports in Tallahassee and Jacksonville are now closed. At last check, more than 2,500 flights had been canceled within, into, or out of the United States today. And beyond the snow, the pipe-bursting cold remains a major concern across the northern plains and upper Midwest. 215 million of you under cold and freeze advisories. Temperatures expected to hit the negative teens or single digits. And wind chills, those are just bitterly cold. We're talking about 20 to 30 degrees below zero, expected in parts of Illinois, Iowa, Ohio, Minnesota, and Michigan, forcing dozens of school closures. New tonight, President Donald Trump and several tech CEOs, including OpenAI's Sam Altman, have just announced a major AI infrastructure investment project called Stargate. It involves at least $500 billion of private sector investment that Trump says will create over 100,000 jobs almost immediately. The purpose is to make sure there's enough energy to power evolving artificial intelligence technology. 18 states, along with the ACLU, now suing President Donald Trump to stop his attempt to end birthright citizenship. Last night, among the many executive orders signed, Trump sought to define who is eligible for citizenship inside the United States and excluded the children of those illegally in the country and of those in the country on only a temporary basis. The states claim this order defies the 14th Amendment of the Constitution that says, quote, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Trump and his advocates argue these individuals are not, quote, subject to the jurisdiction because of their legal status, and therefore the clause does not apply. Worth noting that in 1898, the Supreme Court awarded citizenship and full rights to a child of Chinese citizens, quoting the 14th Amendment, although in that case, the parents did lawfully live in the United States and operate a business in San Francisco when the child was born. President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance attended a prayer service today, held the day after the inauguration every year since 1933. The focus was on national unity instead of the new administration, a plan made before Election Day. The Washington National Cathedral has hosted 10 inaugural prayer services for presidents from both parties.
Congratulations, Mr. Secretary.
There you have it. Marco Rubio is now the first of President Trump's cabinet nominees to officially start the job. He was sworn in this afternoon after being confirmed by the Senate, which voted unanimously last night. No other cabinet members have received floor votes yet. More confirmation hearings, however, were held today for Elise Stefanik and also Doug Collins. Defense Secretary nominee Pete Hegseth, Treasury Secretary nominee Scott Bessent. They have both passed out of committee for a confirmation vote on the floor sometime this week. TikTok is still unavailable on Apple and Google app stores in the United States today, despite action from President Trump to save the popular video sharing platform yesterday. Trump signed an executive order to pause enforcement of the ban for 75 days while officials look into the national security concerns there. It's not clear whether the app will reappear in app stores in the future. South Carolina's governor believes TikTok should be banned at public colleges in that state, but it would be up to the General Assembly to take action. One lawyer says the idea seems extreme.
It seems to me the most practical thing would be to say, if you persist in using TikTok as an officially sanctioned social media platform, which cannot be done unless the federal ban is withdrawn, we're not going to give you any money. We, the state, are not going to give universities any money.
Legal scholars call it uncharted territory. More sweeping pardons of family members by outgoing President Joe Biden. Tonight, there are new warnings about an abuse of power and long-term negative effects on our justice system as a whole. Here's the very latest with national correspondent Christine Brazow.
On his way out of the White House, President Joe Biden shielding his family from future prosecution, issuing preemptive pardons to his brothers, his sister, and their spouses. In his final statement as president, asserting, quote, "My family has been subjected to unrelenting attacks and threats motivated by a desire to hurt me," insisting the issuance of these pardons is not an acknowledgement they engaged in any wrongdoing or an admission of guilt. It's a sharp pivot from what President Biden said 4 years ago when asked about Donald Trump issuing preemptive pardons.
It concerns me in terms of what kind of precedent it sets and how the rest of the world looks at us as a nation of laws and justice.
President Donald Trump slamming the move shortly after being sworn in.
The brother, the whole deal was pardoned. Can you imagine that?
Since his first term in office, Trump has targeted Joe Biden and his family members for business deals with the Chinese company CEFC and the Ukrainian gas company Burisma, which date back to 2014. The same year, Hunter Biden's sweeping pardon from his father gives as the start date for any crimes he may have committed. Crimes Hunter's former business partner, Tony Bobulinski, assert involved the entire family.
I was introduced to Joe Biden by Jim Biden and Hunter Biden. At my approximately hour-long meeting with Joe that night, we discussed the Biden's history, the Biden's family business plans with the Chinese.
For legal experts, President Biden's departing move represents some murky waters when it comes to the law.
The founding fathers envisioned that pardons would be for somebody who was charged with a crime, convicted of a crime, and a president of the United States would say, "I'm forgiving you of that crime."
Already there is speculation the preemptive pardons will be contested, with questions about whether the action of pardoning someone who's never been charged with or convicted of a crime is constitutional. And the answer may need to be provided by the Supreme Court, Amira.
And Christine, President Joe Biden certainly not the only one receiving criticism for pardons made yesterday. What's been the reaction to President Trump's pardons of all January 6th defendants?
Also shock. Remember, Vice President J.D. Vance said just days ago in an interview with Fox News Sunday that those responsible for violence at the Capitol that day should, quote, obviously not be pardoned. But they were. That includes people who assaulted police officers, including beating them with a bat. It includes Nazi sympathizers. Donald Trump, though, states that his pardon ends a grave national injustice perpetrated on the American people.
Unprecedented times, that's for sure. Christine Frizzell reporting for us from Washington, D.C. Thank you. In a rare stay of execution, the United States Supreme Court ruled in favor of an Oklahoma death row inmate pausing her execution. Brenda Andrew, the only woman on death row in Oklahoma, is convicted along with her alleged boyfriend of murdering her late husband, but they appealed the sentence because prosecution inappropriately included details of her sex life in her trial. In a 7-2 decision, the Supreme Court agreed that information was prejudicial. Brenda's case will now be revisited by a lower court. And new border czar Tom Homan says, as promised, immigration and deportation operations begin today in some cities across the country. The first missions are concentrating on public safety threats, according to the new border czar.
They know exactly who they're looking for. They know pretty much where they'll find them. So, again, these are well-planned operations. This happens throughout the nation. I mean, I'm not going to tell you specific locations out of officer safety concerns, but ICE is back doing their job effective today. They haven't been able to do it 4 years.
This, as we learn, a border agent is dead, shot and killed on duty in the state of Vermont. The agent was making a traffic stop near the northern border. One suspect, a German national, died in that shootout. A second man who also suffered injuries is in custody. State police are assisting federal authorities with the investigation. Dwayne Davis is still set to be tried for the murder of hip-hop star Tupac Shakur. A Las Vegas judge denied Davis's plea to have the charges thrown out. Shakur was killed nearly 30 years ago. No one has been brought to justice for that murder. Davis was arrested last year in connection to the killing. His trial set to begin on March 17th. Two missing Ohio children have been found safe a long way from home in Reykjavik, Iceland. An 8- and 9-year-old brother and sister had not shown up at school since late October, and family members reported them missing. Icelandic officials say the mother had stopped taking prescribed mental health medication and brought the children to Iceland. She remains hospitalized overseas until she is healthy enough to return to the United States. And coming up, the new threats facing California residents as crews continue to battle deadly wildfires that started earlier this month. Then the changes happening at the northern border as President Trump's administration rolls out new immigration policies. And later, the biggest threats circulating on the dark web and the new technology criminals are taking advantage of. Firefighters are battling several new fires that broke out in Southern California today, including 3 in San Diego County. The biggest one, the Lilac Fire. It's 35% contained, and the other 2 have mostly stopped growing. But strong winds could pick back up as soon as tomorrow. This as officials in Los Angeles County continue to fight the deadly Palisades and Eaton fires, though they are mostly under control. Our parent company, Sinclair Incorporated, is doing its part to help, partnering with the Salvation Army for Sinclair Cares California Wildfires Relief to provide meals, water, and supplies to the hardest hit areas. And you can scan the QR code right there on your screen or go to sinclaircares.com for more information. Everyone held in the D.C. Central Detention Facility on January 6th. On January 6th related charges is now free. Yesterday, President Trump pardoned around 1,500 people convicted for their roles in the riots. They're now being released from prison, including Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes.
I think Trump did the right thing. President Trump did the right thing by letting these guys out and pardoning them because they did not get a fair trial. And that's not on him. That's on the DOJ.
Judge Eileen Cannon is keeping the block in place, preventing the Justice Department from sharing the full Jack Smith report on President Trump's handling of classified documents with Congress. Former Attorney General Merrick Garland had sought to share the report privately with a small group of lawmakers on the condition that they would not disclose what they learned from it. It's unlikely the current Department of Justice will appeal this decision. 2 Americans imprisoned in Afghanistan, Ryan Corbett and William McKenty, are now free. That's according to their families and the Taliban. An Afghan serving a life sentence in California, Khan Mohammed, was also released. It was the culmination of 2 years of negotiations in Qatar, according to an official. At least 2 other U.S. citizens are thought to be held in Afghanistan. And tonight, Hamas says it will free 4 more female hostages this Saturday. Their identities expected to be shared about 24 hours before their release. The exchange will come nearly a week after Hamas released the first 3 hostages after a ceasefire went into effect this past weekend, halting hostilities in the more than 15-month war. 33 hostages in total are expected to be freed in the first 6 weeks of the truce, as are dozens more Palestinian prisoners. Russia and Ukraine continue to trade strikes. Today, Russian drone strikes hit homes, energy lines, and a school in eastern Ukraine. No casualties were reported. The strike comes as Ukraine targeted Russia oil and ammunition depots right inside Russia near the Ukrainian border for the second time this week. Last night, Trump called on Putin to end the war. Marco Rubio, the new Secretary of State, was on CBS this morning to talk about the next steps.
The conflict needs to end, and it's a policy of the United States that we want it to end. We want to do everything we can to help it end. We are going to engage in making it end and in a way that is sustainable, meaning we don't just want the conflict to end and then restart in 2, 3, or 4 years down the road. We want to bring stability.
And we have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we begin in Washington with security changes at the northern border.
Within hours of President Trump declaring a national emergency at the southern border.
And I will send troops to the southern border to repel the disastrous invasion of our country.
The questions up north remain whether security here will tighten up and what that effort would look like.
I'm not sure we need it up here too much because it seems to be pretty good relations with everything. But down south, I feel like we definitely could use it. Probably.
Across the border, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police report it is increasing existing border surveillance with these additional helicopters. They say they will help in continuing to keep the border secure.
An early morning attack on Multnomah County's election office, the same day as President Donald Trump is sworn into office. Police saying the group that did this wasn't likely tied to a specific political party.
The writing on the walls is largely anti-establishment, anti-government. At this point, we are not suggesting that this is directly related to the inauguration. I think it's important to remember that we have seen these types of attacks regardless of who's in office.
Did you have any intelligence leading up to this that there might be violence on Inauguration Day?
Not specific to the election offices.
Just last week in Brockport, as the thermometer neared single digits and the snow began to fall from the sky, firefighters needed to brave the elements to put out a fire at the historic Morgan Manning House. Tom Hayes with the Henrietta Fire District says extra precautions must always be taken in wicked weather.
We get into it, we'll try and call in more personnel early on, taking more breaks, and then obviously we've got our vehicles we can get into if we're switching crews around, we can get in out of the elements. Same thing with any other people though, dressing in layers, wearing the appropriate protective equipment on.
It's not just the people in the fire department, the trucks also need a little extra care.
Obviously the trucks they've got water in them, so we have to leave them. If we're outside, we'll leave the pump running. It keeps that water circulating, keeps it from freezing.
Coming up, how criminals escape capture on the dark web and why stopping them is so challenging for law enforcement. Most of us never even try to go there, but Spotlight on America is taking you to the dark web. With the help of one of the nation's top cybersecurity experts, investigator Angie Moreski pulls back the curtain on this secret world to expose the underground marketplace, often used by criminals.
It's a place people go to buy and sell illegal goods and services.
A buffet for fraudsters. It's a flea market of stolen merchandise.
From drugs to illegal weapons, tools for fraud, and worse.
This is right on the dark web.
Haywood Telcove is the CEO of LexisNexis Risk Solutions Government, which helps federal, state, and local governments fight cyber fraud and crime, especially against children.
Some of the most heartbreaking things that you see are the sale of children. They're sold like you would sell a piece of furniture.
That's outrageous.
It happens every single day in this country.
This is the real person.
And Telcove showed us what he calls the biggest threat on the dark web today when it comes to financial fraud.
Use of generative AI deepfake tools is changing the landscape of fraud. That is an AI-generated image.
He points to the sale of generative AI tools like this.
This individual right here is from Nigeria.
That create a fake look.
What the technology has done has changed him from being Nigerian to what looks like an American man.
To make it easier to carry out fraud.
Love you, love you. Love you, love you.
Like romance scams, or as fraudsters call it, pig butchering.
You pretend to be somebody's friend, you get them to trust you, and then you start stealing money from them. So you fatten up a pig, and then you butcher it.
Stolen, personally identifiable information is also rampant on the dark web.
These are fake passports that are being produced.
Used to create and sell fake IDs.
Imagine what you could do with a fake U.S. passport. You could open up a bank account. You could apply for public benefits.
Complete with tutorial videos showing scammers how to rip off government programs.
It shows you how to get Medicaid. It shows you how to get TANF or SNAP or WIC or some other government benefit.
Unlike the regular internet that has websites indexed and tracks where you go, this anonymous network keeps many from being identified by encrypting their location and movements with a special browser you have to download to access it.
The dark web has provided a level of anonymity that makes it very difficult to catch them.
What is the biggest obstacle that law enforcement faces in fighting fraud on the dark web?
It's just so massive. They could spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Nobody can possibly keep up with it.
And if this made you curious to explore the dark web on your own, Talcove highly recommends you don't.
It's a dangerous place filled with serious criminals who are monetizing horrible behavior.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Angie Moreski.
The FBI is the lead federal agency tasked with combating cybercrime, but the agency told Spotlight they could not accommodate our request for an interview. But we plan to be asking in the next administration, and we'll be back in 90 seconds. The silver lining of all that Texas snow, opportunities to live out some rare fun. Look at this. Here are some Houston first responders partaking in an impromptu snowball fight in that storm. Houston firefighters and police going at it here, accompanied by childlike smiles and laughter. And in the video, if you could hear it, after the fun is done, one of these officers offers coffee to their cohorts because a hot beverage, of course, is the best way to balance out those bitter cold days. And that does it for this edition of the National News Desk. We invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage of America's top stories. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching.